Yeah, man. Greetings once again. We are back on the couch. Welcome all our viewers. Thank you for your viewership, following, your likes, subscriptions. We appreciate very much. Give thanks. Today we are back with Unoko. Grandmaster Thau Thau Haramanuba. And on the many topics that we have spoken about before, we're just going to expand a bit more on them, going to further detail a little bit, and maybe talk about certain other aspects that influence the psychology of the spiritually enlightened people, and spiritually enlightened in inverted commas. Because now, the fact is, what today is known as spirituality or is practiced as spirituality or religion has so much external influences in it that at times you cannot differentiate between what is indigenous and what is foreign, what is borrowed and what is owned. And before we go into such details, we're going to talk about the influence of the Bible in our communities, in our consciousness, in our spiritual worldview, whether it's good or bad. And then we're going to touch another topic that many people who confess to read the Bible or profess to believe in the Bible are not even aware of the existence of. Things like the apocrypha, the lost books of the Bible, the forgotten books of Eden, the Gnostic Gospels, the Nag Hammadi library. A lot of Christians, when you talk to bishops, pastors, priests, when you talk to them and discuss religion or spirituality, for that matter, and you mention such books, the one response I've always got was, yeah, kidi buka tsa lona tsa marasta.
Yes.
It's your Rasta books. And we don't read such books. It's your Rasta books. But these are not Rasta books. These are Christian books written by Christians to substantiate the Christian religion or the Christian doctrine. Now, I'm going to ask, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a little bit. And I'm going to ask for somebody who is watching, a Christian, believing in the Bible, believing in the Christian religion, worshiping Jesus and Jehovah, Sunday, and all of that. But you are not aware of the fullness of the scripture of the religion you follow. How does now, from an outside perspective, and you've mentioned before that you studied theology, you studied the anaphoras, you've studied the mysteries, you've studied the interpretations of the Bible. From a theological point of view, looking at another theologian who has no clue of the literature that speaks about the faith that he's teaching, how do we make sense of that?
Greetings, Abba.
My Lord.
And the viewers of Unpopular Opinion and the good people that we're meeting on the street who are appreciating the great work in terms of knowledge sharing and knowledge analysis and so forth. So, yes, my name is Thau Thau Haramanuba. I'm the Grand Master of the Order of Bagas. So let's begin from this premise that, remember, the Bible is not African, number one. We're talking about the African Christians, right? So here you are dealing with people who are looking at a Jewish book, with English spectacles. That is, those who go by the King James Version of the Bible. And remember, in the whole sub-Sahara Africa, the Bible was introduced by the missionaries. Different group of missionaries. London Missionary Society, Berlin Missionary Society, Paris Mission Society, like those who were working in Lesotho, the Eugene Casalis, the Ellen Beggars, the Robert Moffats, all of these groups of missionaries, Richard Barton, David Livingstone, and so forth. And it was introduced as one part of colonization, of colonialism. We've said it before in this platform that colonialism carried with it triple C, which was to civilize, which is basically a euphemism for westernized or Europeanize the Africans. English size. Hence, your Christian name is an English name. Hence, you are told that you can only go to heaven if you are dipped in water, because you have inherited, and when you get dipped in water, you get to be given a Christian name, which is an English name, which is a European name. And because you have inherited a sin from two people who've got nothing to do with you. Which is the funny part of it, that how is it that we got to inherit the sin of Adam, but we can't inherit the wisdom of Solomon or the wealth of Solomon, and we are as poor as ever.
We are choosing just two characters from the whole
book. So that is one part of it. Now, the other part of it is that we talk about sub-Saharan Africa now, Black Africa. And then let's talk also about Ethiopia, because they quickly to say, yeah, but Ethiopia have the oldest version of the Bible. All these people who talk about this thing, they have never even read the Ethiopian Bible for one. The whole Rastafarian community, which I'm a part of, I'm a high priest in that particular community of a particular order. I know for a fact I'm one of the few or less than 10 Rasta, and probably the only one in South Africa who went and studied in the Ethiopian Theology College in Ethiopia. And maybe one of the less than 10 who are using Amharic to pray. And most of them who are doing that, they're copying what we came up with from Ethiopia. So basically, none of them have read the Ethiopian Bible that they're talking about. Now, even the Ethiopian Bible was introduced by foreigners. The first Ethiopian bishop was a Greek.
A Greek man.
Frominotos or Fromintius. The first person who introduced Christianity, according to the Ethiopian church, they said the first person was the treasurer, Jan Dereba, the treasurer of the Kandaki, who was baptized by Philip, according to Acts 8 of the Apostles in the Bible. So this Philip is not an African name already. So there's no black man called Philip. So therefore it is clear that this Philip, who introduced this interpretation of the book of Isaiah to this Ethiopian, was himself not an African. Now, this Ethiopian was carrying a Bible that he could not read it or interpret it. And now the Bible, it depends on interpretation. There are things they call biblical hermeneutics and biblical exegesis. Now, the biblical exegesis is the actual interpretation of the Bible. And the biblical hermeneutics is the principles of interpretation, whereby they have about 4 rules, which is the literal interpretation, the moral interpretation, the allegorical interpretation, and the anagogical interpretation. The anagogical interpretation being the mystical and the spiritual interpretation. Now, what I studied in Ethiopia is that there is a thing called the Tergum, which is the translations of the Bible. I've given example that when they say, Jesus walked on top of the water, they're going to explain that the water is the people. The walking on top of the water is basically to say this man's spiritual elevation was higher than the normal people. So therefore it was like he's walking on top of the waters. So it's allegory. It's example. It's a book based on interpretation from this first encounter of Philip and this man. But also the origin of it, because it is not an African book. It is introduced to the African. So these missionaries has to interpret it into the language. Robert Moffat translated it into the language of Batlaping among the Botswana people. And so they went on. The German, where the Germans have colonized Africa, and they're speaking German language, they had to do the same thing. But there is no direct translation from African languages to European languages. It's seen to asitolog. Understand? But it's to asitology. Now you go further into Ethiopia again. The Ethiopians, they interpret it as they were dictated by these people, the 9 saints from Syria. They've been under the tutelage of the Coptic Church for 1,600 years. Their ultimate bishops were appointed by the Coptic Church, which is like the Arabs of Egypt, who they are called the Copts. So whichever part of Africa you look at it, it is not African, and it was introduced into Africa. Now, I hear the best brains of our race. They're talking about rewriting the Bible. The great Bishop Joshua Maponga, among others.
Before we rewrite the Bible, did we understand it?
Exactly. I'm still coming to that. How do you rewrite something that is not fundamentally written for you without affecting the structure of it?
Okay.
Understand? It is not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
But the great Bishop Maponga, within our Rastafari level of consciousness, rise. He's still rising. Abo. Rise. I don't like a Rasta, no, rise. So some of these things are
cool.
Yeah, so sakula gahle. He's knowledgeable, he's articulate, he's a big man, he's vocal, but rise. Abo. One of the biggest old men, Ram rise up, nanale 55 years. I'm rise up, Rasta, understand? So I'm not saying his rising will rise to the level of Rastafari. I'm saying that he's rising within the African spirituality, which is what is going on now with all of us.
Okay.
So
is
now,
it safe to say a lot of these big social media public giants that speak about spirituality are still in their rising stages?
Yeah, most of them, they're still in their rising stages because they are despondent with Christianity. It is like this concept of African theology that was created by Reverend Gabriel Mulihestilwan, Bo John Mbiti, who wrote African Religion, and all of that. They even make it very clear that African theology is nothing but a Black Christian interpretation of Christianity, or Black Christian interpretation of the Bible. So they still caught up in the Christian space and the Bible space. But now they want to Blackanize it. They want to Africanize it. Now they're trying to Africanize something that is not originally African. So that is why you are hearing about rewriting the Bible or African interpretation of the Bible. There is no African interpretation of something that is not African.
But there's a book, Frank Times.
Yes.
I'm sure you've come across it.
Yeah, Frank Times. Yeah.
The Black God, the Black Jesus.
The Black Jesus, yes. And you have different versions of the Black Jesus. Like if you go there at Yuval, at Silo Fujama, you get this book with all characters in the Bible are Black. It's a King James version of the Bible as you know it, with some footnotes, with some extra stories, right? Now, these people are telling us that the Near East, the Middle East, was once Northeast Africa before the breaking of the Suez Canal thing. So therefore, they are trying to take something from some small geographical location and to define the entire continent. Now, when we talk of Africa from where our school of thought, we talk about Cape to Cairo, not including this. Now, the Bible now, fundamentally, these are stories of the mythologies and legends and fairy tales of the Sumerians, the Assyrians and the Babylonians. The Epic of Gilgamesh.
It's a Near East.
It's a Near East composition.
Of just all stories that were found.
Yeah, and mostly the people of the Near East were dark-skinned. Mostly the people of the Near East, some of them were, I gave example that the same definition of Gaddafi is the same definition of the Black God in the Bible.
Woolly hair, bronze skin. Exactly.
Brown eyes.
What says it's black?
So I'm saying we can't take an exception and make it a norm. Understand?
True.
You can't take an African oddity and try to make it a normality. Look, of all the 3,000 so-called tribe or ethnic groups, all of them, they have a name for God. And all of them, they have a God concept. And all of them have God consciousness. All of them have their stories of creation. You ask the Zulus where they come from, Babuye Zulu. You ask Batswana, Now, in all these 3,000 stories of creation, there is no single story of a God who created the earth in 6 days and rest on the 7th day. The very idea of a tired God who have time to be tired and rest is non-African, understand me? It is not how the African look at God. So now we have the tired God who rests on a Sabbath, and then you want to tell me that this particular unique story, that is unique
to universal truth.
It is a universal truth. And this is a problem of when you use the Bible as a final judge of all African consciousness, all African culture, all African thought system, and say, yeah, but it is not in the Bible, or but the Bible says.
But the Bible says.
Look, we don't need to rewrite the Bible. We need to take the whole book and throw it out. Understand me? We have our stories. The Bible is a violent book. The Bible, God is a violent God. And the Bible prophets are violent prophets. It is there, Genesis. The first murder come from the first monogamous family. You understand me? Which is Adam and Eve. They were just two. And then they have two cheese boys, Cain and Abel. And then another one kill another one. Now that is supposed to be a model of a family. That's how family was modeled for a nucleus family.
But that's why
yeah, I understand. Now from there, you get all this type of murder. Moses committed a lot of murder. In the Abraham. And mostly they convert after they committed a murder. And this God is okay with that. And then from there, you get the whole journey to the promised land. It's murder. It's annihilation of people, cultural extinction, colonization, land occupation. Now you say, this is the best book ever written, that we can only rewrite it to suit ourselves when we have a profound spiritual expression. Now, you need to understand that we are responding to colonialism and slavery. And one of the things that colonialism and slavery invested in was to make sure that they wrap out our knowledge. So our knowledge is not completely lost, it is suppressed. That is why now we're saying others are rising, others have risen, others are in the path. You understand? It's an expected condition. We're going to have a lot of people battle twasa, and not everybody twasang or twasela onyanga. Abanye batwasela knowledge. They are getting back into their natural self, their African self. Now, in this process, that which is being locked into our memory genes will be unlocked. It is a time for it. It is a time for Africa.
It's a time for us to remember.
It's time for us to remember. Even His Majesty Haile Selassie in 1963, when he was opening the OAU, the Organization of African Unity Summit, he said, we Ethiopians belongs to one group of people, the African people. Now, everything that is in Africa will have to be interpreted through Africa. We're not going to take the whole continent and use Ethiopia to try to interpret Africa. No. Now, we have to understand our spiritual journey where it began. It began from the navel of Africa, the Great Lakes region from Batwa. Now, where they gave us the signs and symbols of the primordial man, the very early concepts of spirituality. Now, we go through the Nile Valley high culture that was developed around that. This is from the Bukongo Empire. This is from hardcore Bantu soul. Now we need to use the Bantu soul in order to rejuvenate the Africans. Not go and take some stuff coming out of the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Syrian and the Mesopotamian.
But now there's this argument, Yoguti, Africans didn't write. So now, where can we draw the source of such knowledge? You Africans, now I'm gonna speak as a Christian now, you know? You Africans didn't write any books. So where now do you get that superiority claim? Yoguti, you don't need the Bible because, first of all, you were all raised by the Bible.
Not song.
South Africa is a Christian country. So behind everybody's thought system, behind everybody's worldview, there is a Christian element to it. The concept of, hey, kidlotsa Satan, Satan is a Christian concept. Without the teaching of Christianity that came with our religion and our Bible and our Lord and Savior, you wouldn't be speaking about Satan and no Satan and none. For you to be able to compare the Christian God and what you are claiming as the God of the Bantu, and there's no evidence of this existence, but I can prove in the word of God, Isaiah chapter 23, verse 11, the word of God is eternal. Men will pass away. What can you use to prove the existence of your God? Because in the beginning.
Okay. First of all, we need to decolonize the African mind and disabuse ourselves from that particular Christian self-abuse that we inflicted on ourselves. God belongs to no religion, number one. So the idea that you're going to use a particular religion called Christianity to define God, to establish a relationship with God, is colonial.
For what I just said. I feel like I'm so against myself for that. But
you misrepresented yourself. But it's okay because it is for this particular content. You know that is not you. You know, you are me sitting here. I'm
feeling my soul boiling for that.
Don't worry, I'll double the effort. I'll speak for me and speak for you.
Please.
to redeem you from that kind of situation you put yourself in. God belongs to no religion.
True.
The Africans did not have a religion. We had a spiritual culture. Now, God is a spiritual, the idea of God is a spiritual idea. The relationship we establish with God is spiritual. It is not religious. So the idea that you have to have a book in order to talk about God or to make reference to God is a fallacy. Because first of all, the Bible is not the word of God, it's a word about God. Men said, God say. But there's no book of God in the Bible. Genesis, book of Moses. First book of Moses. Leviticus, second book of Exodus, second book of Moses. Leviticus, third book of Moses. It goes.
There's no
Judges,
book of God.
There is no book of God. Now to come up here with a book that you printed it by the Gideon Society and all of these people, and you come and say it's a word of God.
With over 26,000 versions.
Over 33,000 errors in it, 26,000 versions. This book, it depends on interpretation, and it has been proven historically to be used the way they want. Now, but when they talk of dark ages
I was reading a book last night before I fell asleep. God's Lunatics.
Actually, I was coming to that part that the Bible God is an insane God. He's the omnipotent lunatic. You understand? He's an omnipotent lunatic. Look at this type of lunacy. You piece of God by doing something wrong. And then when you piece of God, they say you are doing certain things.
Okay.
And then thereafter, God take you and send you to Satan to punish you for him.
On his behalf.
On his behalf.
He's doing the same thing that you are doing.
He pissed off God first. He's the first one to piss him off. That is why he was chased from heaven, apparently. You see?
Oh.
Now, and then there's a place created for him, which is going to ban all of the people who did what he did in the beginning, which is to piss off God.
You touched something, and I'd like to let's make sense of this once and for all.
Yeah.
I do wrong. I piss off God. Now, the outing kwatel.
Yeah.
Iyangithatha. Ingisa kule outem kwatisile in the first place.
In the first place.
The first one to offend him, he takes me to the very same person who offended him to punish me on his behalf. Now, aren't we going to have a conspiracy now to even do worse things against him?
Look, this is a game, Book of Job. First chapter of Job.
Perfect example.
Perfect example.
Perfect example.
They say the children of God, when they go to present themselves to God, Satan came with
was
them.
there.
And then from there, they start to have a conversation like Slele kanje. Uthi umbonile umkhanya ukuthi yabona athi umkhanya ukuthi yakuncanywa because umnikeza high grade yabo yonke le that no but thatheni high grade uzombona. So it is a contest between God and Satan. It's a God ego and Satan ego that has to inflict. Now, how do you still believe? I mean, if I was Job, I'll be the first one to get pissed off at God. Yeah.
Ngicishe ngakhulumisa into ngathi nangiyela kodwa ngishongo.
Yeah.
Nangihlanyela nini.
Yeah. Exactly. How about that?
Nidlala ngempilo yami.
Exactly. Why is it necessary to have a God who constantly tests your faith? Why didn't he design us with full faith?
Ngicela uyiphinde leyo.
No, I'm saying, why is it necessary?
To test my faith.
To have a God
you
who
are
constantly
God,
tests-
Mos.
Who-
Awazi yonke into.
He's omniscient. He's supposed to be all-knowing.
Okay.
It's like this thing that he went into Eden, they play hide and seek with Adam. The other one is, Kitle, awa, wabona, bo black man patile, ukutile, Adam, okay. They're supposed to be the all-knowing God. They're supposed to know and pick him up.
Yeah.
Now, there's a whole lot of contradictions in there. And we need to take that as African people as the best but evolved idea of God that we need to have.
Look at that. Let's talk about this thing, Satan and hell. In the 13th century, there is a poet, a writer.
Yes, Dante.
Dante. Dante writes an epic story.
Yes.
Considered in history to be the greatest piece of Italian literature. All right. In this story, Dante describes 3 levels.
9 levels of hell.
Or 9 levels of existence.
Of hell. 3 levels of
But
existence.
3 levels of hell,
Yeah.
9 levels of existence, and 3 levels of hell.
No, 3 levels of existence, 9 levels of hell. Yes.
Yeah. Now,
the comedy.
and
the
it is
inferno.
called the divine
comedy.
Now, look at the wording of it.
Yeah.
What it's called.
Divine.
It is called the divine comedy.
That is why we say Bible is a comic for elderly people.
And you must remember, Dante, at the time he's writing this, it's dominated by the Roman Catholic Church.
Yes.
So he's taking what the church is saying and he's exposing the comedy in it. So he writes this story, the divine comedy.
The divine comedy.
You get 3 levels now. You get the purgatory, you get the inferno, and the paradiso. Now, in the purgatory, there are 3 levels. In the inferno, there are 3 levels. In the paradiso, there are 3 levels, hence the 9 levels of the 3 stages of hell. But now, he's writing the story of his own journey into himself and finding out his own weaknesses and his own faults in purgatory. Hence the hypocrisy. Hence those who are standing on the fence, who know the right thing but don't do it. And then it goes deeper. And then those who failed in purgatory go to the inferno, where all their sins get bent up now. But eventually they are all going to paradiso.
Yes.
Where everything now is forgiven. But now, the Pope and the clergy of the time saw the story. And this is something anyone can Google for themselves. This is not our story. We are not Italian. The Pope at the time takes this story and makes it church canon.
Yes. Look, these people is a bunch of men. Let's talk about now the evolution of these books and their writing. Bunch of men who wrote bunch of stories. Even those stories are not necessary. They wrote under pseudonyms. Ghost writers.
Ghost writers, exactly.
Like Matthew, the person who wrote Matthew.
It's not Matthew.
It's not Matthew. You see, the people who wrote those books are not necessarily even the people whose books are called after. Now, this group of people, they write these books, they're all over the place. 300 years later, because some of them, they were written in the 2nd century and so forth. 325 AD, they convene a conference, the Council of Nicaea. Now, they sit there to decide now which of these books are canonical and which of these books are non-canonical. Which are the books that we go in to incorporate into the Bible, and which are the books we're going to remove them according to how we feel. Like, for instance, this is where the apocrypha come in. This is where you'll find that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is not there because Mary...
It goes against the patriarchal view.
It goes against the patriarchal view. It showed that Jesus Christ was like any other man. He had a relationship. His lover was Mary Magdalene and so forth. Now, they had to present this God who was a celibate. Because it is the line of the Catholic Church. The Pope is celibate, father is celibate, brother is celibate, Catholic priests are celibates, right? yet pedophiles.
So they say.
Yeah, yet pedophiles. I mean, there is a record how much the Catholic Church spent per year in litigation
of legal cases.
Legal cases over pedophilia. You understand me?
There is a Pope who had 11 children. Gregory had 11 children.
Yes. Now, you see now. Now,
different women.
These people have set a standard of adding and subtracting whatever they want into this canon. And then they then wrote in the end of the Bible, the book of Revelation, that you must not add or subtract. If you do add or subtract, all these curses will be upon you.
On you. Yeah.
Now, this is the part I don't read the Bible now. And I don't want anybody to read it for me. Because, one, it shows this is a magic book. It carries curses, spells, vials, judgment, and all of that. And then they said, if you add or subtract,
you are cursed.
You are cursed.
Or you are blessed.
Now, I feel like when the priest stand up there and do his bodmas, multiplication, division, subtraction, addition with the book. Because you see, if you can correct the Bible, you are holier than the Bible.
Okay.
So most of these people who read it, they correct it. They do whatever they want. Hence, the biblical hermeneutics. Allegorical interpretation, literal interpretation. This is where the literal interpretation, people just add and subtract. What they want.
According to how they feel.
According to how they feel. What makes them comfortable.
You had an argument with your wife, you come to church, your whole message is women.
I know a whole lot of priests, including within our Rastafarian community. Like one of them, I'll not mention him by his name. One of them, if you have a disagreement with him, he's going to look for a verse for you the whole week. So that when Sabbath came, he read it. And then I know a couple of ones, they commit all type of sexual assaults. And then when you come into the church, whether it's a Sabbath, Saturday, or Sunday, they're the first one to run to the altar and start to open the Bible.
Yeah.
And try to drive a narrative based on interpretation. These are the literalist interpretation of the Bible. They do as they wish. Now, this is what my point is.
I call them criminals.
They're criminals, of course.
Because, as you said, if you add or subtract, you add on to the... These people are actually cursing themselves
and the
but
congregation.
Sharing the curse with us as well.
Exactly. That is why I say I don't want anybody reading it for me. Because for starters...
You are not initiated.
You don't understand what you are reading. This is not written in the layman's language. Mm-hmm. This is a book based on interpretation. You never went to theology college to study those interpretation. Even if you did, these theology colleges are also denomination-based.
Exactly.
You see, if you are of the evangelical group...
You go to evangelical theology.
And then you have your...
Seventh-day Adventists have their own theology colleges.
And so forth. Now, this is a magic book that is given to us. And this is where we said black people hate everything about colonialism except Christianity. But black people are too quick when you talk about African culture and they try to criticize our ancestors that they gave our ancestors mirrors and then we give them kettles. They gave them shiny objects and we gave them this. But they don't talk that the white man came here and gave us the Bible and teach us to pray with our eyes closed. When we open our eyes, we had the Bible and the land is gone. Understand me? So there is a fundamental part we should talk about, that this book you're trying to tell us that is African, it was given to us and they taught us to pray with our eyes closed. They taught us to pray with our eyes closed, and when we open our eyes, we're left with the book.
But you see this even in, like, as you're saying, I'm thinking, hey man, ziningi izangoma ezigqoka amabhayi nobuhlalu azithwasanga.
Yeah.
Ziyathwasisa futhi. Zithwasisa abanye. But bona self, they are not initiated.
Yes.
Based on vicarious experience. I saw this happen, now I know it, I can do it myself. But now, at the end of the day, like the Bible, we have no meaning and personal experience of what we are talking about. Where is the danger now for me as an African committing my whole existence to the Bible and to what the priest says? Because first of all, let's be honest. Let's be very, very honest. There's a podcast on YouTube now, I saw recently, but my brother, Uskim GP, he used to hold a heist where we cash in transit. He went to prison. Now he's a pastor. Okay. I give thanks for that. He changed his life. But here's the common thing. I don't know him personally. I saw the podcast. But there's a pattern here. I won't call names. I'll call him because he came on the podcast and he introduced himself thus. But long before him, there are so many big churches in South Africa, big known churches in South Africa. Obafundiswa Njivan, ex-con. These people, and actually there's gangs, 26, 28, 20, I don't know about those gangs. But there's this one gang, but it like Gauteng kakhulu, but Rev what 3 or something, whatever they call them. A lot of these people come out and become abafundisi, becoming young, become abafundisi bemapostola nepiga, oh pastor, na. Okay, here's where my question is. Have criminals realized that the Christian institution is a criminal institution? Now they are using it to perpetuate their own criminal enterprise?
There are many factors involved here. No? You remind me of this story. They give it as a jest, as a joke. As a son goes to his father and says, "Father, I want to get involved in organized crime." And then the father said, "Religion or political party?" Or
okay.
You want to do church or political party? So both are organized crime. So here's the thing. There is even a documentary in YouTube, the Al Jazeera one called The Gold Mafia. You have one of the biggest priests, Hubert Angel, who said he's second after President Mnangagwa. He's involved in moving the gold and all of that. But on a broader scheme of things, these churches are laundromat.
Money launderer.
Money launders. Look, they found Thabo Bester in a week in Tanzania, but they could not find Bushir. And I'm of the view, and they say Bushir was flying millions out of this country every week. Understand? And I'm of the view that he left that time when the president of his country was here. And of course, our president should know. You know? Now, again, this explained to you this old alliance between church and state. Politicians and pastors. And all of them are involved in the same thing.
It's organized crime.
Robbing the people, organized crime, and so forth. You know, when you are sick, they want to pray for you. But when they are sick, they have serious medical aid. Understand? They go to the doctors. Now, this is scam that largely work for money laundering. You can check Hollywood movies. The only church I know that drug dealers do exchange in the church, shooting in the church, is the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
You see.
Christianity.
The Catholic Church was getting 15 cents for every slave that was taken.
True, that's documented history.
There's a documented history. That's why the other day the Vatican was apologizing. But every level of criminality for the past 2,000 years, the church has always been involved in that level of criminality.
And that's just 15 cents recorded. Not a
whole lot of things, including the liturgies that they've also provided.
You paid for your sins.
The King of Belgium addressed the missionaries when he's sending them, Leopold, when he was sending them to the Congo. Now it's the state, the king,
talking to the
church. And then he said to them, you go there and you teach them theologies about God. Don't teach them about God. They know God. They call him by many names. Teach theologies about God so that they can abandon their riches and we take them. Is it not robbery?
Okay.
Good.
Church and state working together.
Yeah. Now you go into the Bible again, where God was in charge of this invasion of the Canaanites, the Amalekites, and what. There is also involvement of confiscation of their properties.
Gold and silver is
gold mine. And silver is always there.
Jehovah.
Gold and silver is mine.
It's there in the Bible.
Yeah. Now they say in God we trust. The Americans. Now the biggest
on the dollar bill.
The biggest looters of oils, resources. Now, God.
By the way, the biggest Christian nation.
And the biggest Christian nation. Because you can't be an American president if you're not a Christian.
You're not a Protestant Christian.
That is why they gave Obama a hard time at one time questioning his pedigree, that his name is Arabic. So he stayed a little bit in Malaysia. So he's got an Islamic influence. So he's not Christian enough to be the president of America. That is why every political criminal profess to be religious. That is why every time there are campaigns, the politicians go to the churches. That is why most of these politicians of ours have their specific church that they have relationship with. So this relationship between church and state is been there. So basically, God is just gold, or oil, diamonds.
Noko. Wakikwa. Wakikwa uring. Wakikwa uring. Na indoda ompedi zongibulalisa ngabafundisi. Madoda lo muntu hlalela impopo lo. Uthi the church othi ngibheka camera face to face. And I am 100% for what you are saying. The church only exists to rob the people. Usho njalo.
Not necessarily. They are
with the help of their brothers, the politicians, church and state.
I'm just saying
it's a criminal enterprise.
Church and state is a criminal enterprise where they're intertwined.
Now, President unama million esofeni, so I can understand that.
Yes. Now, what I'm saying is I'm not completely discarding church, because you see, I sat down and I look at two things that is so hard and difficult to take away from Black people, which is religion and church. So therefore, we need to create an African religion for African people and an African church for African people.
To accommodate this
I'm for that. And I will very soon open an African church. And we talk about the African God. And we talk about African religion. So you don't have to torment Black people about going to hell, inheriting a sin that they got nothing to do with, and making them all these type of things to eat grass and chow nonsense. You understand? A church which is infused with Ubuntu, a church where the congregation and the pastor have mutual respect of one another. Right now, things are getting outrageous. I saw some men, family men, line up on the floor with their women being beaten by belt by some pastor. You know, like you have a whole lot of perverts. Like you were saying, that there are a whole lot of criminals who are coming out of jail and opening churches. You have a whole lot of perverts who are lining down black people and doing them all type of things. The other one, he doesn't step on the ground. He was born walking on the ground and more time barefoot. He never had shoes. Now he's got these sharp-nosed shoes. Now he can't
walk on the ground.
He can't walk on the ground.
They must lift him up every time.
Look, these churches are doing to people what even Jesus never did to people in his time. Jesus walked on some dipalema mo, or about the palm leaves.
Palm trees.
Yes, and ride a donkey. When he was feeling
these
like he needed to be
ride Bentleys and Maseratis.
Exactly. You see.
But now, here's the thing. How do you justify the existence of a Christian religion in a Black society?
Colonialism.
This is where I'm going. Uguti. The Africans, we need to get, specifically as South Africans, as Kulume family meeting. The only way and reason we got Christianity was through the whip, the shambok, the hole, and death. Christianity didn't come to us njenge awuthi mayishela intombi. How intombi ngiyakuthanda usemuhle unkosazana. How ungakuthengela inkomo epinki mina. No. It was torture.
Yeah.
It came hard. So a lot of us compromised. Kuna lento besithanda ukuyikhuluma sithi i-third generation syndrome. The first people were beat to death and tortured for Christianity to be accepted. They taught their children to accept Christianity to avoid the punishment. They gave birth to children with the idea that Christianity is normal. Now we are stuck with those who gave birth to us, who taught us that this thing is normal, but we are realizing, no, this is not normal. This is a form of psychosis. Inkolo is a form of ukhlanya. Psychologists have done research on this. There's a book, about 11 psychologists, I've spoken about it before. They came up to study abantu abakholwayo. Revivalist psychology. This is pure madness.
Yeah, you see, once, and we need to give context to what we are saying now in terms of the African religion, although Africans never had a religion before, but now we're living in the age of religion. And a human
people need to be organized into boxes.
Yeah, and human beings have a capacity to create religion out of anything, including soccer. And politics.
True.
Yes.
The Church of Maradona is there.
Yes. Now, and the idea of a church. We always run some black church in a smaller scale within Rastafari. But I'm talking about a black church in a bigger scale, like what Dr. Khadebe is doing, what Prophet Mageja is doing. Those are the type of church that the Africans need to have. Something that teach them about them, that does not take them out of them. Something that enhance their Africanness. Because we're Africans and we have to move from Christianity to Africanity. We're Africans, and the only time these things become madness is when we move out of ourselves to believe the most ridiculous things that if it was in our own space, we wouldn't believe them. And they will not even fit in with our idea of Ubuntu. So if we're going to have a religion, Ubuntu is the spirit of our culture, of the African culture, of the Bantu culture. So if we were to, and the philosophy, it is our worldview. Now, we need to have a religion and a church that is driven by the African worldview, not for the Africans. The white church is for the white people, the stuff they believe.
Granted.
They're consistent with whatever,
them
with their
what
culture.
they believe, yeah.
And the China church must be for the Chinese, because these things are consistent with their nature, their beliefs, their values, and so forth. But now if you come here, a Buddhist, while you are black, you are just touching on the outer or the exotic part of it, that's it, but you are not into the soul and the heart of that. Hence, I'm saying there is a rise in that. And we're encouraging that there will be a rise into that African spirituality and African centeredness, because just like on the political level, they talk about we did get political freedom and then we need to get economic freedom. But we also need cultural revolution. And cultural revolution, it entails African, you see, our African heritage include our cultural, our spiritual, and our historical. This form our African heritage. Now, we can't talk about Heritage Day, we don't talk about African spirituality. There is no country in Africa whose national religion is African spirituality. These countries in Africa, their national religion is either Christianity or Islam. You understand? Now, that is incomplete. It is clear that our revolution, it is incomplete. So we need to get into that cultural revolution that the national culture of a country should be African. The national religion of a black country should be African.
The governing system of a country should
The Africans should not be sitting down and trying hard to explain themselves that
in an African context.
It is this thing of Africans fighting to be Africans in Africa.
Okay.
Now, and it can be correct that we fight to be African in Africa. We need, every time we come up with African things, we need to explain, like when you were impersonating a Christian, whoever now, and asking those questions, which is what they're asking. And fellow blacks.
Fellow blacks.
Yes, and that is a level of our own brainwash. That
fellow blacks.
You have black people who are divided into two groups: those who defending black ideas and those who defending white ideas, all the time. Like what you are saying, it is just going to have two groups of black people, and not even a single white man who came up with this idea will come to rescue his own ideas. So this is the Willie Lynch syndrome, that you become a self-monitoring slave. You even create your own idioms. You start to say, and all of these type of things to adjust to this enslavement. So we need to move our people from there, and they understand that when you talk of God, you don't talk about something that is exclusively Christian. When you talk of God, you not talk about something that has a book. Because we had God here. There is no tribe without God, and we did not have a book. Because our idea of God is that God cannot live in a book. even in the Bible, they say that when one of these people wanted to build a temple for God, he said, I don't believe in a temple built by the hands of men. Hence, they say your body is a temple of God. Now, our God is not somewhere, it's everywhere. We carry him everywhere. Mama is busy cooking there. Watch her. Yo, mudimu waka. It get invoked anytime, everywhere. So we need to bring our people to that consciousness. So we need to go back to our ancestral consciousness in order to define our current consciousness. Now, our ancestral consciousness has always contained the idea mudimu, badimu, libutu. Now, this is the modalities that we need to approach in order to reclaim our spirituality and to be very comfortable in our own skin. Because you see, in this time of the awakening of the slumbering giant of Africa, and in this time of African Renaissance, in this time of African spirituality, our people should not find themselves caught up between either Kemet or Obungoma. There is African spirituality.
Uthinte inyoka emsileni lapho. Because I was about to stop you and ask you, ukuthi Christianity was our problem. Now there's this sudden rise of awareness. No man, Christianity actually is not what we were looking for. Now there's this surge, not a rise, a surge of Kemet. Also now, replacing Christianity, but still suppressing isintu. And unfortunately, we are creating religions out of it.
Oh, definitely. You see this Kemet, I know one brethren, he also rises. I saw his rising in stages. One, clearly he used to be a Rasta, and then for a brief moment, and then from there he established this Kemet thing, which is Kemet in the absence of the rest of Africa. A Kemet that does not...
A Kemet in the absence of the rest of Africa. Okay, thank you.
Because now the founders of Kemet, they say, we come from the beginning of the Nile.
The heart
of Africa. Which is in the Bukongo, the foothills of the mountains of the moon, in a black Africa. Now, he had this Kemet ideology that looked down on Bungoma. But then later I hear that now he's toying with Ama Sangoma and Obungoma. Now he's there. Rise. When we need to allow them to rise.
Yeah, we need to give them space to grow.
Africa is rising. So this surge of Kemet and surge of Obungoma, it is a natural, it is an expected condition of this rising because these are the two things available to them. But we are providing more and more options. Hence we are talking about there is an African traditional religion, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah. I think me and you are at fault here.
Yeah.
More me than you. Here's why. You've been in the public for many years. You've been teaching. You've opened yourself up for all this time. I, on the other hand, I'm always in my hole, hiding myself, don't want to be seen in the public. Until
I was actually surprised that you accepted the unpopular opinion offer because
until this unpopular opinion.
I know you were keeping to his goal or circle.
You understand? I keep to myself. But is it because of people like us that this madness is going on?
No, it's not even a madness. Let's put it in a proper context. You see, I went to Shaka Marine 2 weeks back. Remember the other day you were with Ngamane, with Maseko, He was wearing the anchoring, so we're having a thing. I wanted to inherit it. I wanted it. So even I saw now with hers, I wanted to. I thought it was like it. I'm looking for it. So he told me, no, I can find it at Shaga Marine. So I asked somebody to look for it for me. Well, she couldn't find it. So I got the opportunity to go to Durban. I went there to look for it. When we get into that shop, the woman who's running the shop, she's like, so many people came this week looking for Ankh. So we see that there is this rise in this Kemet consciousness. I don't know whether they are true or false about it.
Okay.
I said to her, Mama, the true and false of it doesn't
matter
right now. Because as far as I'm concerned, all Black people who are Christians are imitation Christians.
Okay.
So we are not born Christian, you are made Christians, either by colonialism or by society or by socialization. Although people will say, me, I was never forced, I made a choice. No, choice was made for you to make a choice. You're pushed towards a choice because you live in a society that claims to be 80%
If you're presented with Coke and Sprite, you're forced to choose Coke and Sprite. You don't have a choice.
Yes, we say it is better they fake what is theirs than to perfect what is foreign. It is better this Kemet is necessary for the African consciousness
To come back home.
And then it leads to something, because you see, you were talking about this thing, they say we have nothing written down. We have collection of writings, which albeit it is the white men who put it together and called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It is one of the records that they have, although there is a strong attempt to try to make it a Bible.
Yeah.
There is even a claim to say the Bible comes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now you'll hear the people tell you that the Bible was copied from us, but yet they don't go to the original. They still hold on to the copy in order to define themselves. So we need to understand our mode of instruction. We did not use this current concept of knowledge absorption and knowledge sharing called reason and logic. We used intuitive system of knowledge. We used oral...
Experiential.
Yes, we use oral tradition. So these things are not lost. They are still kept in our languages, in poetry, in our witty sayings. So they need now the African interpreters of the custodians. We are here. I hear they talk about Bona Abakulu Baseke. And sometimes I think that probably we're about 10 in this country who are those people who come from the ancient brotherhood of Kemu, which they call Kemet. And we are here to take the people back home.
You
know, we're not.
A whole lot of others are claiming it.
Yes. So we're actually 9, not 10. You see, what they call the Ennead.
The Ennead.
Yes, we're 9 of us. Bumkhulu Nsingiza is one of them who are engaged with Kemet, the Kemet consciousness. So these are the council of Abakulu Baseke. Now, where we are connecting Bantu and Kemet. Now, they always, the writers of history, people like Gerald Massey, the Book of the Beginning, Egypt, Light of the World. They talk about this Africa we talk of, the oral tradition Africa, the Africa that never wrote anything down. They say it's an inarticulate Africa. And the Africa that then recorded the things like Kemet, Nubia, they say it is the articulate of Africa. They say that is the mouthpiece of the inarticulate Africa. Now we need to put our own interpretation to this thing, because it's not completely correct that this Africa was inarticulate. When you talk of the Ishango bone, it's found in the Congo. The oldest artifact, actually, the oldest mathematical evidence of writing. It's a Ishango bone. And then you have the Bantu scripts. You have all this type of writing.
The stone engravings in Pumalanga.
The writings Zimbabwe. Of the Batwa. The signs and symbols of the Batwa. Now, we have to look at writing according to a particular civilization. We wrote on the wall.
Okay.
We wrote even Haba Khupa, Molapeng,
but that's the difference between
the Ankara symbols. Understand?
Left brain and right brain activity.
Exactly, like Jinyame. The Akan symbol, Jinyame. But there are a whole lot of those Ankara symbols that form part of our own writing system and script. Now, people are trying to judge writing according to Western concept of writing.
Greek, Latin
or Greek logic of what writing is. Biblia, the book. Understand? But writing, we had it on the drums. We had the writing on the walking stick.
That is writing.
This is writing. If you go in to look for the cover of this, and take you through the language of the wood carvers is writing. Because some of our people, they were calculating dates through this, seasons through
Events.
this. Every time there is this, then they make another line. Every time, this writing system, they still do use it even in jail. You find these prisoners is counting
On the wall.
his days, writing on the wall, scratch 9 and then make the 10th one. So they've been writing always took many forms. Now to judge Africa on the basis of writing and writing talking about Western concept of writing, it is unfair. It is unfair in so many ways that we always using European concepts to define African phenomena. That our phenomena in terms of knowledge passing, we have custodians of knowledge. Abagcini bomlando. You understand? We have, and these custodians, these great custodians are in many forms, in a form of traditional healers, in a form of our oral traditionalists. You had them throughout Africa. Among the Mondays, they call them the griots, the storytellers, and who have a principle of storytelling that they have to pass it. Izimbongi, all this different way of passing knowledge. So our knowledge is still contained in our own indigenous system of knowledge storing, not book. So book is Western way of recording. We had our own records. And so these things of Mudimu,
what you are saying is
we had it recorded.
we are judging a soccer player by his failure to shoot a hoop in a basketball court.
Yes, that is basically that. This is the world we are living in, that you are trying to judge a fish by its inability to climb a tree. Understand that? Because therefore, it is illiterate.
It's illiterate.
You understand? Now, whoever came and say we are illiterate, he's himself illiterate of us. It's the illiterate of us. Look, one of them, the emperor, I think it was Menelik, or one of the entourages of His Majesty, they were going to London in those early 18th century, 19th century. They had a conversation with this British aristocrat. And then the British aristocrat asked him, do you know Paris? No. Do you know France? Belgium? No. Do you know that? No. Then you are ignorant. Then he, in return, asked him the same question. Do you know Tigray? Do you know Amhara region? Do you know this? He said, no. He said, then you are equally ignorant.
Yeah.
So we elect people like that.
Yeah.
That when these people come in and say we are illiterate,
to tell them, but no,
but
you
okay,
are ignorant of my culture as well.
Now, if I don't know your idea of science, when do you know my African science? Do you know Mukadi Watol? Do you know Ditai? Understand? So we could not go blow by blow with this thing. We allowed something that parade and claim to be superior to hoodwink us and to bamboozle us. And so we are bamboozled into this, and that is why we are a nation of perfect English speakers with empty stomach, because they made English compulsory in school and agriculture optional, that you can choose to do agriculture. But English is a must. So then we become perfect English speakers, empty stomach, because we don't learn agriculture or food production. So value systems, they created value system for us, the value system that they don't even go by. We call them European, but the Europeans don't necessarily go by those value systems. The Chinese, they have their own value system that make them who they are, the greatest inventors, the Indians, and so forth. So Tina, you must remember that we come from a great tribulation. We had an education designed for us called Bantu education, or Christian national education. That is why you were required to have a Christian name. That is why you have to have a thing called assembly. When you go to school, before. Then you have a subject that was compulsory called BIPS, Biblical Studies. So we were made Christian by institutionalization and socialization and education and acculturation. So now you hear people saying, I made my choice. You did not make a choice when you started to be taught to pray this thing from crèche. Okay. And then you go through school, primary school, warapela, every day go assembly.
So you never really chose to be what you are.
And you became that which they wanted you to be, which remember that this type of education...
product of a program.
Yes, this type of education was programming to make us subservient, to make us only wise enough to wake up in the morning and go to work, and dumb enough to understand that, you know what, a salary is a bribe they give you to forget about your dreams. That you go and build someone else's dreams every time you go shop right to Wahadi dreams, Mr. Ackerman. You don't think of building your own shop right. You understand? That is why most black people, they prefer to have a job than to create a company.
True.
And then when they die, their job, the following day, they put somebody to replace him
And
at
their
work.
children are left.
Out,
waiting.
and then Baba Romela condolences or maybe the last check. Understand? But well, the reality is, if you have a company, if you die, your children can inherit the company, or your family can inherit the company.
If you have cows, if you die, your children carry on with the cows.
Yeah.
I think Christians, this is not our responsibility. It's the responsibility of Christians, and this is direct now. We are afraid of people's sensitivities. I think now it's the responsibility of Christians, as much as it's the responsibility of Rasta, as much as it's the responsibility of Muslims, as much as it's the responsibility of Buddhists, Hindus, whatever. Christians, as South Africans, it becomes your responsibility now to sit back and ask yourself, it's clearly not your choice to be a Christian. You found the system already in play. Here's where the responsibility to you is. Is it working for you? Now, working for you is not buying you a pair of shoes or making sense in your head. Are you is your family still together? Whole family still in unity? Are you fulfilling your duties at home as a man, as a woman, as a young child, as a girl, as a boy? Is Christianity a truth to you, mostly wedwa? Or is it a functional thing in a society?
Well, maybe let's put context to the content, that what is basically is, in the broader scheme of decolonization, because we're engaged in this discourse as a part of decolonization, not criticizing.
It's not critics.
Or judging, as the sensitivity of our people will be like, you are judging us.
Yeah.
Forgetting that majority of them, they judge African culture and tradition.
They are always judging.
They're always judging. Now they find, Africa has found people to speak for it. Because they must be. We will never be left alone. You know, Reb Mushanyana Sinkatani Mupulisu Wabatu Mpenya Kodomodu. Wabarem Sindisi, Wabantu. Because we will never be left alone. They were also told that they will have their savior, Jesus. So we are here to save our race.
And to ask the relevant questions.
And to ask the relevant question that keep us in slavery. So now, to put context into this is not judging or anything, but they will interpret it that, because you see, if I'm judging, I should have the ability to execute the sentence. So don't say I'm judging you when I can't even send you to hell for that, or I can't send you into any condemnation. I'm just challenging your assumptions. I'm just giving you an opportunity to reflect on your subjectivity.
To question yourself.
To question yourself in the context of the whole, because this self of yours is problematic to the collective. Remember, we are Bantu. Umuntu ngabantu. We find our individuality within the collective, and this thing is still affecting so many ways, because you have this type of attitude. You are part of the SGB. Because you have this negative perception. You chase children for having sangoma beats or for having dreadlocks from school. So you are part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. So we need to engage you. We need to decolonize that space that every now and then get to persecute the Africans, because this is a colonial religion whose hallmark is being persecution, witch hunting, is just being a problem to Africans.
A separatist state.
You understand? So now this problem to Africans, we're engaging it in order to provide a solution. And the solution, it is a completely decolonized Africa, a total liberation of Africa and the Africans, so that Africa should be free.
Let's ask ourselves the relevant questions. Sizobuya after the break and carry on. When we come back, we're going to talk, what is it to be African? What is it to practice African religion? What is it to be a professor of African culture? outside of a Christian context. Give thanks, Abba.
Give thanks.
Let's go take a break. Spuza manzi, and then we go come back. See, kubeke sihlinzele nkomo le.
Yebo.
Yebo, give thanks.
Siyabonga.